Hello, class. This is Professor Satterwhite, of course, and we are going to be talking about essentially the next couple of weeks, how we're going to put things together in class. I know that there's some concerns about what we're going to do in class and how we're going to get things together, and I'll just say that we're all going to do the best we can. I'm gonna drink a lot of coffee, and maybe you will too, and maybe we'll have time through our forced internet classes to be able to make a really strong class as a learning environment. E-learning is a challenge in general as far as the entire environment for classes. I think we've all taken, most of us at least, have taken online classes. And I don't have a problem with online classes per se, but considering that this wasn't originally set up to be an online class, then it's going to be a challenge for all of us. And especially considering that the last part of our class is a very tactile experience, and that is the zine. I got a pin that I found the other day, and I'll show it to you. I don't know if you can see it very well. Where's my camera? There it is. I read zines. And I do. So one of the things that we are going to see in this next couple weeks is the movement towards our zine. Now, considering that we're not going to be able to have the in-class workshops, I'm not going to be able to break out the scissors and glue in the same way that I would otherwise, and I'm not going to be able to pass around construction paper and to do some of the funnier things that otherwise turn a college classroom into what seems like a third grade classroom. And do this in a college environment, talk about how this is part of a larger academic project, that it'll be a little bit challenging, and I'm hoping the best for it. I considered making some major changes to this, and one of the big changes I thought about, which I'm not going to do, is I thought about making this assignment into a website, having you do a website or maybe do podcasts or something else. But frankly, I think you know how to do some of those things. A lot of the stuff is pretty easy, and you lose everything with all of it. I mean, websites are cool, but they're not unique by any means. Podcasts are interesting for sure, but I'm not 100% sure I could teach that very well, and I don't want to throw you out into the world and have you make a podcast and then translate that into a zine, because they're different. What I want you to do is to be able to create the zine, and why I decided to go ahead and stick with this as our major project in here is because we're going to be stuck online. We're going to be stuck on our computers for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be stuck in our rooms. And I think that this will be one place where you can turn off the computer for a while and then start using your hands again. Start using your hands, start piecing together things, start putting together your works, and it might be a nice little break for your mind to be able to step away from the laptop, step away from the computer just for a little while, and create something. If there's any goodness that may come out of this COVID-19 change that all of our classes are being forced to go into, one of the big ones that I hope will be something is that we end up creating a lot more interesting things in the next couple weeks. I have a lot of friends who are artists, and they're already talking about interesting ways that they're going to adapt. I keep seeing this one meme going around that said that when Sir Isaac Newton was in Oxford, they closed the campus for Cambridge. They closed the campus for 2 years because of the bubonic plague. And in those 2 years, he developed calculus. He developed which maybe some of you wish he didn't, but he developed calculus, and he developed the theory of gravity. So, you can, if that meme's correct, which I didn't fact check, but I'm sure it is, that if that's accurate, then that's a nice way to spend our time. And I have hope that a lot of us cooped up in our rooms are also going to have some interesting ways that we figure out how to spend our time. So let's go for the creative. And I think that the zines are going to be one of those creative ways that we can spend our time. I wanted to show you a few of the zines that I've come across in my travels. So as you know, many of you know, I was on my way to New York City. I was going to be interviewing Aaron Comment Bus, who's one of the most famous zine writers in the country, and I was going to interview him for a couple projects that we were going to be working on with our classes. However, New York became a hot zone, and our travel was forbidden. And then as we're literally on the road, everything started changing. All my friends started freaking out and saying we couldn't stay with them, and where place started to close, and you know the drill. It happened to all of you in some form or another. But I was in Asheville, North Carolina. One place that decided to stay open was a bookstore. It's a cute little place called Downtown Books in downtown Asheville. And I went over to the corner section and I found some zines. When you go to a bookstore, especially a used bookstore, I would challenge you to look around and see if they do have a zine section. If the place looks small and hip, and if it's in a hip town, then there's a really, really good chance that you're going to find zines in there. So if you didn't know what zines were before, you will by the end of this class, and you may very well may find an interest in zines. So, a few of you have already expressed that you've become very interested in zines since doing this class. So I want to show you some of the ones that that I found. Here's one. This is Doris. Doris is by far one of the most famous zines in the country. I would say second to Comment Bus. Doris is probably one of the most famous. It's written by a author named Cindy Crabb, and Cindy has now done a lot of different things. She's a therapist now, but before that she was an active zine writer, and still writes her zine. It's just that she's a little more she's doing therapy now. She's counseling other people now, so it takes away a little bit of the time from her writing, but nonetheless, that she's definitely a very famous writer. So you might not catch this when you look at a work like this, and you see the type. I'm going to hold this up just so you can see it a little better. When you see things like this, you might not instantly think of this as academic work, and it's really how we look at academia and how we look at the importance of writing and the many different forms that writing has taken historically. Cindy actually does a number of lectures throughout the country. She's lectured over at Harvard. She's lectured over at Ivy League schools, non-Ivy League schools. Tried to get her here at UWF once, but timing didn't quite work out. But this is in her papers, just like a lot of the famous zine authors are being collected by a lot of major universities because they recognize the importance of this work. And Cindy is definitely in that category. Cindy Crabb is definitely in that category. So I was happy to come across this zine as I was out there in Asheville. And I have to admit, reading this, even though it's a couple years old, was pretty inspiring. I got the same inspiration that I do when I read other zines. Or not all zines, but at least some of the better zines that are out there. I also found this in the same bookstore. This is Slingshot Magazine. This follows in the tradition of the Underground Press. It's less of a zine, more of a newspaper, but I'm going to show you this if you could see it. I don't know if you could see, but the only reason it's more of a newspaper is because of the content. They do this monthly, bi-monthly, and as they're writing the content for a lot of for the publication, then it comes across as a lot more newsworthy than anything else. But the style, for sure, is very different than the Pensacola News Journal, for sure, and it's also very different than most other publications. Well, to mention this stuff. They see themselves as definitely connected with the zine world, and you could see this. They're even doing zine reviews, so they do zine reviews in here. So even though the paper is more of a newspaper per se, underground newspaper from the 1960s, 1970s tradition. I believe that one first came out in the 1970s. That is still around to this day. People still read it, and still fairly popular newspaper that's published out of the Berkeley area, and definitely is put together by human hands, just like your zine is going to be. Now we're going to go even further back, and I have to say this was one of my highlights of the trip. So if we had to have everything cancel and stick around in cities we didn't plan to stay longer than we did, that I was so happy to find this. This is a journal. I wouldn't necessarily call it a zine, but I would, if you want to go further back in time, that this has a lot of the same qualities to it. It certainly is a self-published magazine, and with small print runs, a group of people, young people who are putting this together. This is, follows the same patterns. So probably the only reason it wasn't a zine is just because it came out in the 1920s. So the publication itself is nearly 100 years old, and it's called Fire, devoted to younger Negro artists. And this was part of the Harlem Renaissance. This was a major work. If you can find something like this, then it's worth a pretty penny. This one here is a 1982 reproduction, so it's still older than most of you, but it's a little different than the 1920s version of it. But it was cool, though. It came with a letter from the person who was one of the original editors for it, so I was happy to see this. And even the reproductions of this are still fetch a pretty penny. I was sitting there looking at it and trying to decide, should I get this or not? And I almost walked away, and my friend said, "You're going to regret this if you do walk away." And I promise you, I would have regretted it. So he was right. But I got this, and this is written by a number of artists. Probably the most famous ones that you know of are Langston Hughes and Florida's own Zora Neale Hurston. She has a pretty big piece in this work and was on the editorial staff as well. So it shows you that the zines and the content go back for a long way. So even though there's differences between this, you see the typewritten hands and the drawing, and maybe this, it looks a little bit more traditional journal style, art journal style, and this newspaper. I think if these were people, they would all stand up and agree, yes, we're in the same family. So looking at all of these and actually reading Doris last night made me decide, yeah, we're going to make zines in the class. We're going to do this. We're going to stick with our original plan, keep everything as normal as possible. And my hope is that you're all going to be able to create something. You'll be able to create something really interesting out of this. All of that said, if there are some major concerns, major problems that you have, then just like with any other class and any other project, I want you to let me know. All right, these are unprecedented times for all of us, and because of that, I will make allowances, for in ways that I think are might be helpful for some of you. So that said, if you're freaking out about all sorts of things and this isn't something that you need to freak out about, then we'll work around it. We'll do what we can. I have alternate assignments that look very similar to websites. So if that's where you need to go, then I do have some plan Bs for you, even plan Cs if necessary. But that's we're going to try our best to stick with the original plan, just like everybody's doing right now, just like everybody's doing throughout everything in the whole university, and probably throughout all of higher education right now. We're just going to try our best. We're going to try our best and see how this works out. So that's what we're going to be moving towards. I will say the major assignment change that is going to be different over the next couple weeks is I'm going to take out the obituary section of our writings. We were going to write either obituaries or appreciations, and I thought with all this heaviness going on around the disease that is definitely something that we don't need to do. So we're going to take that out of the class, that section out of the class, and what we're going to do instead is we're going to do a little bit of a travel journal. So we're going to create a travel journal, and in the travel journal, you will should be able to put together some pretty neat things. And I'll give you an assignment sheet, and we'll change this around, either a travel journal or a journal related to your COVID-19 experience, your personal experience. Because personally, zines are a great place for you to be able to see yourself in this certain moment. And that's one of the things I wanted you to do with this anyway, was to see yourself in this moment. And as a class in very unique, interesting times, I think you seeing yourself in this moment is going to be pretty special to you at one point. Hopefully, it'll be this will be a once-in-a-lifetime moment, and you might want to keep this later on. What were you doing during the Great Plague? I was writing zines. That's what I was doing. So anyway, that's going to be our class over the next couple weeks. And if you have any questions at all, any problems at all, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help you in any way possible. Okay. And yeah, so anyway, I'll just give you this last little show of the F. Scott Fitzgerald house that's in the background. It's my travels over here. I'll probably make some videos for anybody who's really interested in F. Scott Fitzgerald and how I ended up over here at his house, his house over in Montgomery, Alabama. So I hope you're doing well. Let me know if you have any troubles, and otherwise I will see you soon on this form.